The scent of pine needles hung heavy in the air, a familiar and comforting aroma that always brought a sense of peace to John. John knelt in the garden, his calloused hands gently turning the soil. Gardening was his sanctuary, a place where he could momentarily forget the weight of the world and focus on nurturing life. Beside him, little Hector giggled, chasing a butterfly with clumsy steps. The innocence of his son's laughter was a stark contrast to the dark secret they harbored. John smiled, his heart full. In these moments, he could almost believe that their life was as simple and carefree as it appeared. His wife Alex emerged from their cabin, her hand resting on her rounded belly. She was the anchor that kept their family grounded, her strength and warmth a beacon in their lives. 5 months pregnant, she glowed with a warmth that rivaled the setting sun. Her presence was a reminder of the new life they were bringing into the world, a symbol of hope amidst their struggles. Their life was simple, peaceful. They had built a haven away from the chaos of the outside world, a place where they could be themselves without fear. But it was a carefully constructed facade. Beneath the surface of their idyllic life lay a constant undercurrent of tension and vigilance. John and Alex harbored a secret, one they guarded fiercely for the safety of their family. They were not like other families, their bloodline carried a legacy that set them apart. They were werewolves, their bloodline carrying the ancient curse passed down through generations. This curse was both a gift and a burden, granting them extraordinary abilities but also marking them as targets. Every full moon they transformed, their humanity giving way to the primal instincts of the beast. These nights were both exhilarating and terrifying, a reminder of the duality of their existence.
John caught Alex's eye, a silent conversation passing between them. They communicated volumes without words, their bond forged in the fires of shared trials and tribulations, a silent conversation passing between them. They both knew the risks, the constant fear of discovery. Every day was a delicate dance of maintaining their cover while protecting their family. They both knew the risks, the constant fear of discovery. The threat of exposure loomed over them like a dark cloud, always present, always menacing. A group called the Safekeepers hunted their kind, believing them to be monsters. These hunters were relentless, driven by a misguided sense of justice and a deep-seated fear of the unknown. John and Alex swore they would do everything in their power to protect their children from that threat. Their love for their family was a fierce and unyielding force, stronger than any fear or danger they faced. Their secret was a heavy burden, but they bore it with unwavering love for their family. They knew that as long as they stood together, they could face whatever challenges came their way. Their bond was their greatest strength, a testament to the power of love and resilience in the face of adversity.
The wind howled like a mournful spirit whipping through the trees. John sat bolt upright in bed, his senses on high alert. A strange unease settled in his gut. He could smell it, a faint, unfamiliar scent carried on the breeze. Danger. Alex stirred beside him, her eyes fluttering open.
"What is it, John?" she whispered, her voice thick with sleep.
"Something's not right," he murmured, his gaze sweeping the room. He could hear Hector's soft breaths from the next room. He had to keep his family safe.
John crept towards the window, careful not to wake Alex. Peering through the darkness, he saw them, flickering torches in the distance, slowly but surely getting closer. The Safekeepers. They had found them. Panic surged through John. His heart pounded in his chest like a drum, each beat echoing the urgency of the situation. The shadows in the woods seemed to close in around him, suffocating and relentless. He had to act fast. Every second counted, and hesitation could mean the difference between life and death. The forest, once a place of solace and peace, had transformed into a labyrinth of danger. He shook Alex awake, his voice urgent and filled with a mixture of fear and determination. "Alex, wake up!" he whispered harshly, his breath coming in short, sharp bursts.
"They're here." The words hung in the air, heavy with dread. John glanced over his shoulder, the shadows playing tricks on his eyes, making every rustle of leaves sound like footsteps. "We need to go, now!" His voice was a low, urgent hiss, and Alex didn't need to be told twice. She sprang into action, her maternal instincts kicking in.
Alex's eyes widened in fear, but she didn't hesitate. Her mind raced as she tried to process the gravity of the situation. The safety of her family was all that mattered. Scooping Hector into her arms, they fled into the night. The forest, their sanctuary, became their escape route. The trees, once familiar and comforting, now loomed like silent sentinels, watching their every move. The forest, their sanctuary, became their escape route. The dense underbrush snagged at their clothes, and the uneven ground threatened to trip them with every step. but they couldn't stop. They had to keep moving. John led the way, his senses heightened, his every instinct screaming at him to protect his family. He could feel the presence of the safekeepers closing in, their relentless pursuit a constant pressure at his back. The safekeepers were close behind, their voices echoing through the trees. The sound of their pursuit was a constant reminder of the danger they were in. John knew they had to find a way to lose them. John could hear the barking of dogs, their growls sending chills down his spine. The dogs were trained to track, and their presence meant the safekeepers were getting closer. He pushed Alex and Hector towards a hidden cave, a secret place they had discovered years ago. It was their only hope. "Hide here," he whispered, his voice strained. "Don't make a sound. I'll lead them away."
"Hide here," he whispered, his voice strained. "Don't make a sound, I'll lead them away." The weight of his words hung heavy in the air, a promise and a plea all at once.
Alex's eyes welled up, but she nodded, clutching Hector close. She knew what John was planning to do. The thought of him facing the danger alone tore at her heart, but she also knew it was their only chance. She knew what John was planning to do. He was their protector, their shield, and he was prepared to face the danger alone. The realization settled over her like a heavy blanket, both comforting and terrifying. He was their protector, their shield, the one who would stand between them and any threat, and he was prepared to face the danger alone. His resolve was unshakable, his love for his family, his greatest strength, and he was prepared to face the danger alone. With a final, determined look, John turned and disappeared into the shadows, ready to do whatever it took to keep his family safe. The night was dark and full of terrors, but his love for Alex and Hector burned brighter than any fear. John raced through the undergrowth, the sounds of pursuit growing fainter. He had to lead the safekeepers far away from Alex and Hector, even if it meant putting himself in danger. He doubled back, creating a false trail, hoping to buy his family some time. But the safekeepers were relentless. They were experienced hunters, their senses just as sharp as his. John felt a surge of despair as he realized he was surrounded. They had him trapped.
"There he is!" a voice boomed.
John's heart sank. They had found him, he had failed. They closed in on him, their faces grim, their eyes filled with a mixture of fear and hatred.
"They see me as a monster, a creature to be eradicated, but I won't go down without a fight. I will protect my family, even if it's the last thing I ever do."
A surge of power coursed through his veins. The full moon hung high in the sky, bathing the forest in its eerie glow.
"Here it comes, the beast within."
John's eyes flashed silver as the transformation began. He embraced the beast within, his body contorting, his bones cracking and reforming.
"I'll give them a monster to fear."
The safekeepers gasped, their confidence wavering for a moment as they witnessed the transformation. But their fear quickly morphed into a steely resolve.
"We can't let him win. Raise your weapons."
"Ready to strike!"
They raised their weapons, ready to strike. John roared, a sound filled with primal rage and anguish. He lunged at his attackers, his speed and strength amplified by the transformation. He fought with the ferocity of a cornered animal, his teeth bared, his claws slashing. Each blow was fueled by his love for his family, his desperation to protect them. The safekeepers fought back, their weapons finding their mark. But John was relentless, his pain masked by his determination. He was a whirlwind of fur and fury, cutting through their ranks with terrifying ease. He wouldn't let them hurt his family. He wouldn't let them take away the future he had dreamed of. He would fight until his last breath. One by one, the safekeepers fell, their bodies littering the forest floor. John's vision blurred, his body screaming in protest. He had never pushed himself this far before, but the thought of Alex and his children gave him the strength to keep going. Finally, silence descended upon the clearing. The air was thick with the metallic scent of blood and the musk of werewolf musk. John stood panting, his body covered in wounds, his enemies vanquished. He had won, he had protected his family, but the victory felt hollow. He had paid a terrible price. He staggered, his legs threatening to give way beneath him. He had to get back to Alex to tell her that they were safe. Alex waited in the darkness of the cave, her arms wrapped tightly around Hector. The air was thick with tension and the silence was almost unbearable. She could feel Hector's small body trembling against hers, his fear mirroring her own. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig sent her heart racing. The forest was alive with sounds, each one a potential threat. She strained her ears, trying to distinguish between the harmless noises of the night and the ominous sounds that could signal danger. She prayed for John's safety, her fear a living thing inside her. Her whispered prayers were a desperate plea to any higher power that might be listening. She couldn't bear the thought of losing him, not after everything they had been through. As the first rays of dawn pierced through the trees, she heard a sound that made her blood run cold. It was a sound she had dreaded, a sound that signaled the end of their fragile peace, a low growl filled with pain and exhaustion. It was a sound that spoke of a struggle, of a fight for survival. Alex's heart ached at the thought of what John might be enduring. She emerged from the cave, her eyes searching the forest. The light of dawn cast long shadows, making it difficult to see clearly. She squinted, trying to make out any movement among the trees, and then she saw him. Her heart leaped with a mixture of relief and fear. He was alive, but he was hurt.
John!
John stood at the edge of the clearing, his body battered and bruised, his fur matted with blood. He looked like he had been through a war, and in many ways, he had. The forest had been their battleground, and he had fought valiantly to protect his family. He managed a weak smile, his eyes filled with love and relief. Despite the pain, despite the exhaustion, he was happy to see them safe.
It's over, they're gone, we're safe now. His voice was hoarse, but the words were a balm to Alex's frayed nerves.
Alex rushed into his arms, tears streaming down her face. She held him tightly, as if afraid he might disappear if she let go. The relief was overwhelming and the tears flowed freely. Hector clung to his father's leg, his small hand clutching John's fur. They were safe. The nightmare was over, but the scars would remain. But their happiness was tinged with a profound sadness. The cost of their safety had been high, and the memories of the night would haunt them for a long time. John had saved them, but at what cost? The physical wounds would heal, but the emotional scars would take much longer to mend. They had survived, but they had been forever changed by the ordeal. John didn't live to see the sun rise again. He died in Alex's arms, his last breath a sigh of contentment. He had fulfilled his promise. He had protected his family. Alex wept, her tears a mixture of grief and gratitude. She would never forget John, his love, his sacrifice. He would live on in their children, in the life they would build together.
We will never forget you, John.
As she looked down at Hector, his eyes wide with a mixture of wonder and sorrow, she made a silent vow. She would raise their children with the same love and strength that John had shown them. She would teach them about their heritage, about the sacrifices their father had made, and she would make sure that John's memory lived on, a beacon of hope and love in their lives.